Championship, of course, is at the Convocation Center, March the 8th through the 11th. Tickets are on sale now. You can buy a general admission all sessions for $30 and a reserve general admission all sessions for $40. One other programming note before we also bring up Coach Rowe in just a moment is that last night we did have a special edition of the Mike Houston Show. We filmed it here locally, and you can see that now. It's through a link through the Matazone portal on demand. You'll find it there, the Mike Houston Show. We kind of snuck it in last night, so if you want to go back and watch that, it's about a 45-minute to 50-minute program as we take a look back at the 2016 championship season. On to men's basketball, the Dukes 7-18, 5-7 after a split last week, remaining in 7th place, 1 game out of 6. They did themselves a favor by beating the 6th-place team Northeastern this past week, and they're 1 game in front of 8th-place Hofstra. Last week, the Dukes lost at Elon 67-61 on Thursday, but beat Northeastern at home Saturday afternoon 73-69, splitting their regular season home-and-home meetings with those two teams, both winning at home. A couple of team notes. Jackson Kent passed Denzel Bowles and Jamar Perry. He enters this week with 1,126 career points, which ranks 23rd at JMU. Next on the list is Dwayne Broyles, 1,137. John Newman is within range this week with 1,151. And then Andrei Semenoff, who played about 10 years, I think, for the Dukes, he finished his career with 1,203 points. Andre, of course, we love you, man. CA notes, home teams have won 70% of the games this year, which is a bit different. Last year it was a 50-50 split, 45 and 45. 2 years ago, home teams won only 52%, 47-43. So 70% for the home team, so hopefully that bodes well for the Dukes coming up this weekend. Thursday, the Dukes at UNCW, tied for first place, are the Seahawks, 21-4, 10-2, 7 o'clock start. You can hear that on the JMU Sprint Broadcast Network. Yours truly and Dave Thomas on the call. Online video through Hawk Vision, free of charge. You can also access that through the Matazone portal. And they begin pregame coverage at 6:40. UNCW tied for first place with the College of Charleston. They lost 2 of their last 3. They lost to William & Mary, then the College of Charleston. They then bounced back and beat Delaware 108-80. They hit 21 three-pointers in that game, which tied a CA record set earlier this year by Northeastern, also coincidentally against Delaware. Saturday, the Dukes do host Delaware. The Blue Hens 9-16, 2-10. Again, you can hear that game on the radio network. You can see that on Matazone. Ryan Rutherford will join me on that one. And the Dukes played in Newark on January the 28th and fell to the Blue Hens there 66-61. Saturday's game will be presented to you by the JMU Duke Club. Coach Rowe, your turn at the podium, sir.
Thank you. Get right to
Coach, congratulations. Big win for your team on Saturday. Talk about some of the things that you're pleased with what they did in your victory over Northeastern on Saturday.
Again, I know keep repeating the same things over and over, but we're playing so many close games this year, and what I like more than anything, obviously winning, but the fight and making the plays down the stretch. I thought there was one time Shaq dribbled the ball off his foot, and against College of Charleston, we didn't get that. Ramon dove on the floor, got the loose ball. Ramon got a block down the stretch. We did some things. Ramon even got an offensive rebound, so I thought we did some things down the stretch the last 3 minutes that helped us win the ball game. And that's, when you're playing close ball games, I thought, again, going back to Elon, tie ball game, 1:20 left, and Swoop hits a 3 on a breakdown in our press. Yes, there was a breakdown, but Swoop had to make the play. He had to hit the 3. And that's what happens in close games. You got guys that make plays down the stretch, and I was really pleased with the focus and the fact that we made some hustle plays and just some solid grit plays down the stretch.
You talked about Ramon right there. Talk a little bit about his maturation over the course of the season, because it seems like lately, obviously, he's playing a lot more because of the situation, but he's also doing a lot more, rebounding the ball a lot better. You talk about the hustle plays that don't necessarily show up on the stat sheet. Talk a little about, I guess, his maturation over the past season.
Well, he had a lot of experience. He played a lot at Niagara, and to be honest, I don't think he was in great shape or the kind of shape that we want to be in, especially those forward spots. The forward position is really important to me, partly because I was a forward. So, and I just look at great forwards, and, I'm going to recite some high level forwards like Scottie Pippen, LeBron James. Those guys are stat sheet stuffers. They do everything. And, I don't think there's one stat line that you can look at with Ramon or any good forward. I think he has to be able to defend multiple positions. I think he has to be able to handle the ball, shoot the ball, like rebound it. There's a lot that's required of those forward positions. And, they have to be some of the most athletic and most versatile players on the court. So that's what we're looking for Ramon to do. Maybe not focus on scoring or maybe one stat, but be a guy that does a lot of different things really well. And I think that's in the games that he's played well, it hasn't been that he scored 16 points. It's been 8.5 rebounds, 3 assists, diving on the floor for a loose ball, getting an offensive rebound. And that's what we need from him.
Coach, you talked a lot about, what this team has gone through, all the close games, then losing Yohani, and now we're into February, and you can probably kind of hear the clock ticking for the seniors a bit. Do you feel like this team is now playing with more emotion on the court, especially as the season starts to wind down?
No, honestly, I think once we kind of change the lineup, we have some energy guys. Like Paulie's always going to play with emotion. Tom's always going to play with emotion. Yvonne's always going to play with emotion. So, I think those guys have felt that urgency. This is their senior year from the time I got here. Jax, same way. But I do think maybe Shaq, just because maybe he's in better, he's healthier now or whatever, whatever. He is starting to play like a senior who's running out of time. And so there is a little bit more urgency there, maybe with Shaq.
And as a former player, what's your message to the team in terms of controlling those emotions and,
Well, the thing is that, again, with guys like Paulie, Yvonne, and those guys, like I said, they've been playing this way. They've sensed an opportunity. It hasn't been a change for them. So it's not about maybe controlling it. For them, I actually want them to continue to do the things that they've been doing. But I do, I've talked to Shaq, and I tell him, whatever your goals are, whatever your goals were going into the year, there's still time, they're still out in front of you. So go and play as hard as you can. But I don't want him to, look at every game like I got to prove something to somebody, like I got to go try to get 30. I think our team has been, playing pretty well, and I feel like he needs to try to make sure that he fits in and does the things that he can do to help the team win without going out and putting a number on, I got to play this way because I'm running out of time. So there's a little pressure on him to do that.
Coach, as you get ready to go to Wilmington, they were here not that long ago, and really I felt you played well and played with them most of the game. Looking back at that game film, have you looked back at it to kind of highlight the things that you felt your team did in that contest and what you'd like to see them emulate again on Thursday?
Well, I think the mistake that can be made about that game is, again, there's no moral victories, and we played them close, but we didn't win the game, and we made a lot of, their teams are playing, there's some teams, I watched the Delaware game, and then, Delaware was up 18-17 on them, and they lost 104-81. You see them, you can't, that's the way they play. You can run with them for a while, you can play with them for a while. I thought transition defense was terrible. They scored, I think they had 4 baskets after we scored in that game. And, that's the thing, you can lull yourself to sleep saying, we handled the press. I think we only had 10 turnovers. That's something we have to do. But we have to defend the post better. We obviously have to defend the perimeter shooting better and transition defense. You can play with them for a while, but they're so spurtable, they can, and I don't think we did a good job of, I thought when they wanted to step on the gas, when they turned it on, we didn't match it. And that's what you have to do for 40 minutes with a team like that.
Obviously, we talked about Yvonne's sort of progression here over the past couple of weeks. We talked about early in the season, he kind of was one of those guys that sort of saw your hiring as a new opportunity. I guess take me back to some of those early months before the season started, and what were your conversations like with him, in April and May and June?
Good question. The reason I'm smiling is because some of those conversations, they mean a lot to me with Yvonne, but I'll keep them private. But just to say that we're pretty we talk, we're open and honest, and he's a good dude. I trust him a lot with telling him a lot of stuff that goes on with the basketball team and decisions that are being made. And, he talks to me a lot about the pulse of the team. I would say this about the first conversation that I had with him, because I didn't know Yvonne at all when I got this job. And I had the first meeting with the team in the locker room. And there were some things that I expressed, some goals that I had, some things that I want for this team. And again, I've always said the expectations I have for this team maybe aren't what the public had. I know there were 7 seniors. I knew the makeup of this team, and I knew that there were some things about this team that the outside world may have a perception about that weren't necessarily true. I knew we needed more ball handling and whatever. So I knew we were going to, maybe struggle a little bit offensively, and there were going to be some things that we had to iron out. But I expressed some things about how hard I wanted us to play, and that I was going to play guys that defended and rebounded and guys that really bought in. And right after that, Yvonne came into my office and asked me a couple of questions about some of the things that I said and some of the guys that I challenged in the locker room. And I think from that, my answers, I think he realized that I was serious and real. And I wanted the best for everybody. I was going to play guys that played hard. And I think he looked at that as an opportunity. He looked me in my eye, and I think he saw that I was, serious about things I was saying in that first meeting. And I think he embraced that.
You talk about obviously being an alum here. You kind of followed along. You say you didn't know him too well. I mean, can you give me, I guess, a sense of what you knew about him from watching him play those first 3 years?
Not very much from watching those first 3 years. I actually learned more about him in the first workouts on the court with him once I got the job than watching him the previous 3 years. He didn't really do a lot, and a lot of that. I mean, he was injured. I know he had some concussion issues, and there was a lot going on. Plus, there was a lot of guys here, especially in his positions, early on. And that's a testament to him that even with all of that going on, it kind of reminds me not at the same level, but a similar career path to Clayton Ritter. Now, Clayton Ritter was a great player, but he played with guys, especially his freshman year, sophomore year. There were guys like Jeff Chambers and Paul Carter and, I think maybe even Barry Brown, John Ford. I think there were a lot of guys here in this position. And I think he continued to fight and work and didn't quit, and guys pushed him, and he was challenged every day in practice. And his senior year at JMU was one of the all-time great senior years. Luckily, I was on that team with him, and he was my roommate. But it's similar to that great guy, similar position, obviously, versatile, can step outside and shoot it, jump hook around the rim. Clayton was a more refined offensive player, obviously, but similar in their work ethic and their path that they embraced an opportunity. And by their senior year, they're maybe better players than they were their freshman year.
So I guess what did surprise you then when you went through those first couple of workouts with him?
The main thing, again, I go back to saying it, is how much he wanted to win, how much he wanted to buy in. That was more so than even, obviously, I started him at Old Dominion. So you can see I thought a lot of him from day one. He was in the starting lineup on opening day. But the main thing is that he just really, really wanted to win. He comes into my office right now to this day and says, "Coach, what can I do? Who can I go talk to? Do you want me to go talk to this guy? Like, I know where he lives. He and Paulie, it's never about him. Ever, ever, ever is it about him. It's always been from day one about the team. And that's obviously, I'm glad that he's, making some shots now and those things, but he always brings energy. We have competitive drills in practice. Sometimes we can't get out of those drills because if his team loses 1 or 2, he's saying, "Coach, we got to go again. We got to go again. We got to go again." And it's Jackson, Joey, and Shaq on the other team. And he's trying to lift this team to a win. And he's like, "Coach, we got to go again." So he's just a competitive dude that wants to win.
Coach, let's talk about your pressure a little bit. You've been applying it really the last few weeks, and I know in some walkthroughs and some practices you've really talked to your team about communicating and when to go and when to trap. How do you feel that they've done over the last week or so in your trap, and are they getting more comfortable in communicating the way you'd like for them to?
Getting better. It's to be honest, it's not a team of communicators here besides Yvonne. They're not a lot of, like Joey, I push him. I want him to say more. He's a starting point guard. And Shaq's definitely not a vocal guy, and losing Yohani, who was probably the most vocal, the guy who would bring guys together. So they're not a naturally vocal team. And so, that's something that from day one we've been trying to get him to do. And, I can even tell you yesterday there was a moment in practice where Joey said something to Shaq, but the rest of the team couldn't hear it. And I said, "Joey, what did you say?" And he didn't want to say it. I said, "Joey, you got to say it so that the whole team hears it." And those are some of the things. We got to communicate more and keeping each other accountable, but also more on our defensive and our, getting guys in the proper places offensively. We just got to be, more open and more communicative.
Your last 4 answers about Ivan they remind me a lot of sort of what you were saying about Yohani before he got injured. I mean, how much has Ivan filled some of that void in terms of the communication, the leadership, the defensive intensity? How much has he filled some of that void that Yohani has left?
He's filled it a lot. And again, it goes back to that question. There's not a lot of guys who are going to fill that void. You can push guys and force guys to say, I want you to be more of a vocal leader. But you have to naturally have that in you. And Ivan's a guy who first and foremost naturally has that in him. He's comfortable. And I say this all the time, for a guy who's played in the roles that he's played in the first 3 years, usually those guys get suppressed by their senior year, and they're not. It says a lot about who he is, that he's comfortable with whether he's starting or not starting, whether he's scoring a lot or not scoring, that he's still a guy who wants to be a leader. Like, he's still a guy who's not afraid to say anything to anybody on the team. And that's usually, guys who play the bigger roles are the guys who are more comfortable doing that. So it was never an issue of him, being willing to do it. And obviously once Yohani's still in practice every day, and Yohani talks as much now in practice as he did before. He's just on the sideline. Like, he huddles the guys up and everything. He's been tremendous. But Ivan's definitely a guy who wasn't afraid to fill that vacuum.
I mean, you said Saturday, you kind of laughed that you could go on and on about Ivan. Paulie, I asked Paulie about Ivan. He's like, well, I could talk for weeks about it. What is it about Ivan that you, Paulie, and so many of his teammates just can't stop or don't want to stop talking about him?
Well, when you, again, in a team atmosphere, in any team atmosphere, you appreciate. I've been, play competitive basketball, and at some of the higher levels, winning championships here, winning championships in high school, winning championships, professionally. All the teams that I remember, my team here in '94 was one of the closest teams I've ever been on. The team we won, I played it basically 10 years in Europe. We won 4 titles. Those guys are still some of my best friends. You remember guys that are great teammates, guys that, people talk about all the points. I scored more points my senior year than my junior year. I remember more about that junior year team than the senior year team. Now, some of the people were the same, like Darren McClain was here, and all those guys are great guys, but what you remember is winning and really good teammates and why you won. And so Ivan, and I'm sure Paulie's going to remember through all of this other stuff, that Ivan was a really good teammate. And me as a coach, or me even as a player, you appreciate great teammates. And that's who Ivan is. He's a great guy and a great teammate. Simple.
All right, Coach Rowe, thank you very much for joining us. The Dukes on the road at UNCW on Thursday night, then back home on Saturday, a 4 o'clock start against the Delaware Blue Hens.
I just want to say this was an Ivan love fest today, but he's got to go get some rebounds against Wilmington and Delaware. He better still keep working.
Thank you, Coach. Stand by. We'll have Mickey Dean, head coach of the JMU softball Dukes, in just a moment.